Okay. So my talk, this is what I was going to actually spontaneously decided last month that I was like, hey, this is something I'd like to talk about. This is not, what is on the screen is not it. And I didn't prepare any slides, but I actually do have a blog post I wrote about it. So, oh, that looks awful.
You want to shoot your font size?
Yeah, Control Plus.
Yeah.
That works.
So, in a nutshell, what I did is I wrote a system that will, it's for LCD case design, so that I can design, come up with different project boxes and change some parameters in them, and I have some scripts that run, and will do things like dynamically resize based on the stuff that I want to put inside. So that's in a nutshell. And this is my this is a rendering of one of the actual outputs. In my post, I have a diagram of the workflow. Let's see if that. Yeah. So so what I do is I have these input files that that are various parameters that I can input, and it's based on Python. Actually, this one's better. So this Python script runs and will generate these CAD files that are using a program called OpenSCAD. And that OpenSCAD is a parametric modeler. That looks bad. I don't know how to, well, it's not important. Essentially, I can take text files and describe a shape, and I hit F5, and it will generate a shape that I can preview. And so what this modeling program does is it has a export function. So if I go back to this, I have this Python script that will generate these, generate a SCAD file, generate some JSON files and configuration, and will run OpenSCAD based on some other static inputs. And it'll generate STL files and DXF for laser cutting, so I can laser cut this box.
Now, did you write the Python file yourself?
Yes, yep.
Cool. I'd love to get one.
Yeah, so it's actually, the Python script is not terribly, it's almost like a bash file.
I know, it's just a...
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't do anything really slick. It's the OpenSCAD part, I think, was the most fun part to work on. And so the way that I set this up, let me see if I can improve the font size on this.
If I may ask, did you post the code for this?
I did not. I'm thinking about posting it. It's one of those, I have to do some auditing and cleanup sort of thing, make sure I didn't do anything too embarrassing.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for not posting mature code.
Yeah.
It would be such a novelty.
Right. So one of the neat things that I did too is that I wanted to be able to, I first started out doing this, and I decided that in these configuration files, which I can have different input parameters, like I can turn on, is that readable? Barely. I can have different input parameters that I pass to my Python script that'll in turn pass on to the OpenSCAD file. So let me show a quick example where I can, you see this thing, I have these little footers right here. I can go ahead and set this to false, hit F5. Now they came off. That one's probably one of the lesser exciting ones. I also have different build configurations. This is how the Python script manipulates these variables right here. So I can change that, and it's the assembled view of it.
So you wrote a program to write a program to build a box.
Sort of, yeah, pretty much. And then, I can run this one, and it does the, there's essentially the DXF laser cutting template.
There's a C++ library that also does some similar stuff, and I use that for some work I did with my telepresence drawing.
here's a, let me go back to the assemble view, that's kind of, so I can add things like, add a feature here where there's a button input interface that I have in the front, right around here, so when I hit F5, you can see it resizes it and throws the buttons in there. I have Arduino, it's a different, it'll add mounts for the Arduino in the back. Net might be getting overridden somewhere. Oh, that's for the back side, sorry. So one of the other features, I was like, well, I could sit here all day and code, to add features to it, I actually have a separate file that's just tons and tons of pros on, here, this describes what it works. So I thought, well, for the mounts, I want to be able to do anything. So I wrote some code. Where is it? Well, this master Python script can accept Gerber files and Epsilon drill files, and it'll actually parse them and pull out the outline and the drill holes, except the drill file is just a file with a bunch of holes in it. So if you give it a minimum radius size, it'll assume everything bigger than that is a drill hole, and it'll add to your design drill holes. So that's it in a nutshell. So this one right here is roughly this box, and I mean, it had this little LCD I had on hand and an Arduino, and so it sort of works, and it has a hinge top.
Incredible.
And it's not perfect. I need to work on some of the tolerances, and it's kind of, if you pull enough, it'll fall apart. One of my goals was to have it not need screws to put it together, so it could just snap together. So
Actually, I like yours better when Ada first come up with.
yeah, well, and some of this was inspired by some of the designs I've seen out there, so it wasn't 100%, it sort of has a similar look to a lot of the cases out there, but those, I don't know, I guess they designed them in some CAD system or something. Here's a picture I took of this same one. And then the last part that I actually do a 3D rendering, and I have a bunch of different materials that I can define in my script, and, so I can get previews of what they look like. So,
Can I give you my order for some Raspberry Pi cases
oh,
tonight?
sure. And yeah,
Three
there's
plus cases.
Not at this meeting, you have to go out to the parking lot.
Well, yeah, that's right.
But any discussion along these lines on the email list? Anything you want to put on the website related to this?
Here's some, so this is a box where the tolerance was way too loose. I have.
For those that don't know what we're babbling about, NC State has strict regulations about doing any commercial stuff in these meetings, right? And so we're honoring that. That's what we're joking about.
Question.
Sure.
The plastic that you use, is this a special plastic or is this
It's acrylic.
just the same thing you would get at a hardware store?
Yeah, same. And I'm actually, this is the cheapest acrylic I could find for beta testing. I have fancier and more expensive acrylic at home, but I'm waiting till
Well, the only reason why I ask is because generally speaking, the clearer the plastic, the more brittle it is.
Interesting.
The more
They make
the
some
opposite
pretty
of
good
French
flexible.
opaque.
Nowadays at Lowe's and Home Depot, they have some pretty nice, very clear, flexible acrylic. The only problem is when I cut the acrylic at Home Depot, it made an ungodly stink.
Yeah, it
Oh,
smells.
yeah.
Yeah.
At Splat Space, if you attempt to use their laser cutter for some of these, they won't let you use regular acrylic because we don't have a filter to take the stink out.
Oh.
We stink up the room and.
Yeah, I have a big vent, with this.
So you cut those yourself?
Yeah. So I have this like super fan that sounds like a jet that sucks fumes and vents them outside, but it still smells enough to,
One of those tricks is generally the cast acrylic does not smell nearly as bad as the extruded acrylic.
Yeah,
From
so-
what I've seen.
Yeah, I believe this is extruded acrylic.
Yeah, it's got a sweeter smell, it's not nearly as caustic nasty.
There's also polycarbonate or something like
That
that.
doesn't,
that.
that doesn't,
Okay.
yeah. It does cut,
Is that chlorine or is it arsenic?
Chlorine.
Something.
it's PVC, yeah, PVC is dangerous to cut. The polycarbonate is, I don't think it's dangerous, it just doesn't cut. And I have some boxes at home that were even worse. I had a scaling issue in my CAD program, and my very first cut, I was in such a rush, I didn't realize that it was double size, so it didn't go together at all, so I glued it, and that's at home. So, and I guess that's it. I have some other things.